Scott Grayson's back at the station. He's on the updates today. Of course, you can see Grayson's grades after every Eagles game at 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, Scott, throughout this process, should they have signed him? Should they have franchised him? Where did you stand on that, and what did you think of the deal they got done 2 days ago?
I never expected them to get this good of a deal in terms of favoring the team as well as it did. I thought that if they were going to get Bradford, they were going to have to overpay. I think that, yes, they're paying a lot of money for the first year especially, but it's what it was going to take to get a quarterback who was going to be able to come in here. And, the way I would describe Bradford is not the guy who's going to go out there with the game on the line and grab it with both hands and say, I got this, guys, follow me. I would say that the way they're trying to do this defense, and I've been really high on the hiring of Schwartz. I really like him there as a defensive coordinator, what he can do with these guys. That, look, he just has to take care of the ball. And as long as he does that, which I think he can do, then I think it's a pretty good deal the way it goes down. It gives them the opportunity to start grooming a guy. Whether they take a quarterback this year, they could even wait and take one next year if they want, and still have him play a year or two behind Bradford. So I like the way the deal's done. I think it favors both sides pretty well.
Yeah, I think some of the criticism, if you are critical of this move, Scott, has been, are you basically conceding that you're a middle-of-the-road team? If you're saying Bradford's the guy for the next 2 years, that you don't believe you're competitive for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think if you would have passed on Bradford here, really, it was kind of like they were boxed in, too, because there's not a good option. I mean, there's not a Winston. There's not a Mariota coming out in college this year. Not a guy that you really feel like is going to come out and light the game on fire well enough to be good enough. So you really had to take a guy like Bradford if you wanted to be competitive. And, right, I mean, Peterson, look, he wants to win because he knows if they don't win, then it's going to be him who gets the axe in a couple of years. So it seems to me when you look at what Denver did and you look at the pieces here in place, I get the sense especially from talking to Jim Schwartz, a month or so ago, the pieces are here for this defense to do what it needs to do to keep this team in every game. And I think they truly believe they will, and that as long as they have an offense that just doesn't kill itself, they have a chance to win more often than not.
And I've said this a couple times, Scott, that this new NFL is if you don't have Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, you're basically, in that group that needs a guy that can make plays, that you don't have to rely on to make plays, but you better have a top-level defense. I think the Eagles are trying to build their team based on that method of a guy that can make plays. You saw Bradford play in person a lot. Was it, his skill set? Does he have the skill set that makes you realize, wow, I see why this guy was the number one pick in the draft?
Yes, particularly I saw it more often than not when the bullets weren't flying at him in live. I mean, his accuracy in practice and all that stuff, and I know what I'm saying here sounds pretty simple, but I didn't see it out of Foles all the time. His accuracy is spot on, his rapport with his receivers, and honestly what really took me that I walked out of the locker room after the Giants game at the end of the season with the most was how passionate Zach Ertz and Jordan Matthews were about wanting him back and wanting to go get with him in the offseason and work together as a group. You heard Bradford talk a little bit about that, about getting them out to Oklahoma. The fact that the players on this team wanted him back as much as they did spoke volumes to me, more so than all the negativity you heard from fans at times who said, we don't need him back. When that many players are standing up and speaking up vocally about wanting that guy back, it says something to me. And I think it's a good thing for the Eagles that they did get him back. The kind of deal they got, I think, is favorable for both sides, like I said. And I think it's a good opportunity for them to try to take a couple of steps forward and see what happens. And like he said, you can't overestimate how important it is for this guy to actually have an offseason to be able to do some working out, training, and throwing with receivers. He hasn't been able to do that the last few years. So let's see how much that helps.
Yes, Scott, that's a good point. He brought that up in the press conference today that, look, this is the first time that I don't have to rehab an injury, that I'm going to be able to work out and get with my receivers. He mentioned Ertz and Jordan Matthews as guys that he's trying to get to come out to Oklahoma. I thought that was, you're right, refreshing to hear and, kind of eye-opening at the same time. Man, this guy has had remember last year we weren't sure if he was going to be able to do training camp because, whether he was going to be cleared or not. And then, quite frankly, you could criticize Kelly for this as well, but he didn't play enough during the preseason. Then he comes in, he's rusty. He hasn't played in 2.5 years, and as you mentioned, the bullets are flying. You throw bullets at Tom Brady, he has problems. You throw bullets at Peyton Manning in his prime, he has problems. So I think all of that coupled with he wasn't healthy is you have a guy that just did not look like he was what you hoped he would be. But in the second half, he turned it around to the point where I don't know that got him this deal, but I think it was intriguing enough that the Eagles wanted to see more.
Well, when you chop it up into thirds last year, you say, let's say off season, first half of the season, and second half of the season, you could clearly see some big steps taken forward by Bradford. Obviously, the off season, he did little to nothing. The first half of the season was rough and rusty, as you said. The second half of the season, as you've had Casey Joyner on here talking about, there's a lot of metrics that say, he really was among the top quarterbacks in the league at that point. And I think the Eagles are banking on the fact that with an offseason to work out, with OTAs and training camp fully under his belt to be a full participant in, why can't this guy be even better? And I think that's what the Eagles are looking at here and saying that's what we're paying $18 million this season for.
Talking with Scott Grayson, who is back at the station today. He's on the updates. Of course, you can see Scott's work at 97.3 ESPN.com after every Eagles game with Grayson's grades. Scott, another thing was, I don't know how you felt at the end of the year, but he was pretty insistent and emphatic on, I wanted to be here. I made sure I told my agent that to get it done. Did that surprise you?
Yeah, because I didn't get that sentiment. Not at all. And honestly, I don't blame him for that because, look at what happened at the end of the year. The week of the final game, Chip Kelly's axed. And then he's walking around, and Bradford's going through the final game. First of all, he doesn't have a head coach, doesn't know who the head coach is going to be. I frankly wouldn't have walked around saying I want to be back here because it looked like complete chaos. Now, that being said, I would have told the team I have every interest in being back here just because obviously you're trying to have a job. And I think that's really the way it went. Now, he did say he talked a little bit to Howie Roseman at the end of the season and kind of said that he wanted to be back. And I believe him when he says that, he's really excited about playing for a guy who's actually played in the position in the past and understands what he's looking at. So from all of that, I believe that side of it. As far as where things were at the end of the year, quite frankly, I wouldn't have walked around going, I want to be back here, sign me up, as emphatically as possible, because it was complete chaos. Nobody knew what was going to happen here.
Hey, do you think if Kelly is back here, he's back here? Because he was asked, did he give any consideration about playing for Kelly? He said,
Yeah, he never
whistled and waved that question right off.
I know, right? He never, throughout the end of last season, said anything negative about Chip Kelly. However, body language to me says a lot, and every body language that I saw from Sam Bradford towards the end of that season was that he didn't really enjoy playing for Chip Kelly. That's what the body language said to me. Now, therefore, I don't know that he is back if Chip Kelly's still here.
Scott, what did you think when he talked about getting together with the wide receivers? Is that lip service, or do you think they're really going to try to make that happen? And does that really pay off in your mind when the guys work in the offseason like that away from the complex?
I think it really does pay off, and I totally believe him because I saw in the eyes and heard and asked Jordan Matthews and Zach Ertz about those kind of things with Bradford, and they said they definitely want to do that. They definitely intend to harp on him regularly to make sure it happens. So the fact now that he's talking about bringing them out there to Oklahoma, and I thought one of the things he mentioned was not just for the things you can do by throwing a football around, but just hanging out, building some team chemistry. That part of it sometimes I think in professional sports is overlooked, and if he's able to make that happen and get those guys, as many of them as possible out there to hang out for a week or 5 days or whatever it would be, I totally believe him that that's going to happen. I think it can certainly pay off dividends when you talk about timing. The more opportunity guys like Jordan Matthews, Nelson Aguilar, even Josh Huff have to see the ball coming their way from his hands, I just think it can only help. It certainly can't hurt.
So we're talking with Scott Grayson. He's back at the station on the updates today, and, of course, covers the Eagles for 97.3 ESPN.com. You were at training camp last year. How much of Bradford, I mean, you guys don't get to see a lot. I do realize that. But at what point did Bradford I don't know, did you feel that he was 100%, or how much participation did he have? Did he look like a guy who was rigorously able to get ready for the start of a season?
Well, you're right about training camp. It's hard because he's not facing any much, not really a pass rush. So what I saw was his accuracy, which is one of the first things people tend to say about Bradford that impresses them. And his accuracy was spot on. He was dropping passes in places that are difficult to do. And I could look back on some quarterbacks I saw in the past at training camp, even McNabb, and it wasn't this pretty. So, I started to drink the Kool-Aid at that point. And then the 10 for 10 against Green Bay, I fell victim like everybody else did, that okay, he's ready to go. And obviously that wasn't the case. So it's the things that you see in training camp were the things that impressed me, were the times I was like, wow, that was a perfect pass. Dropped right over the shoulder where only his guy could catch it. And I think we started to see more of that towards the second half and towards the end of the season. And that's what I'm going to quite frankly expect to see now more from him at the beginning of the season.
Don't feel bad, Scott Grayson. I drank that Kool-Aid, too, after that Green Bay game. I thought Sam Bradford was going to go out and have a year for the record books. I thought he was going to carve up the defenses. I thought he was going to put all the balls on the money. There was going to be, new franchise records for touchdowns from the quarterback. I mean, I thought all that was.
He did have a franchise record for completion percentage.
Yeah, but there's a caveat to that, too.
Well, imagine if he had all the drops. What's he complete? 69% of his passes?
We just hope that we can watch practice now, right, Scott?
Yeah, right. Who knows what Doug's going to do. I know there was a question at his press conference about trying to take the team back out for training camp to, off the premises, and he nixed that pretty quickly.
Yeah, they just announced that the training camp is going to be back in Philly.
I think that's from Smolenski, too. I mean, that's the new once they got it away from Lehigh and got it back at the NovaCare complex and saw that it worked and it fit. There was one year when I was still with NBC 40, and I ran into Smolenski on his bike. He came in, and he was out there checking the decals and checking, this is how the fans are going to enter and stuff. So, I mean, it's not the same as Lehigh, but I do think that if you are around the Eagles, ever since Don Smolenski took over as president, you see these little subtle changes, like when the Eagles walk out to the field at the link from their locker room to the field, there's big posters on the wall or big murals on the wall of past greats, and they let fans down there, of course, for a price, but they let fans down there to be a part of that. So, I mean, I think you can see some of that in the way that the Eagles both have decided to leave Lehigh, but also that they're thinking of their fans.
Well, and Scott, I think, and to go to that point real fast, the college, Lehigh, the facilities aren't great. When the Eagles built this NovaCare complex, they have great facilities. They have a lot more ability to get them into the routine of what they're going to do for the regular season. But one thing I thought was interesting, Scott, he talked about the offense, and we keep talking about this is another new offense, it's another new coordinator. Well, he mentioned that, Shermer is going to have a similar offense to what Peterson's going to have. The terminology might be different, but that wasn't something that we really connected the dots on a whole heck of a lot, that, hey, Shermer was a read guy as well, and when he was in St. Louis, that's where he had his most success. So you would think that this could be a good fit for Bradford playing for Peterson.
Yeah, I really think so. And I think, there must have been some conversation, too, where I really got the sense Bradford wanted more, more opportunity, more freedom at the line of scrimmage, which Chip, I don't think, gave him enough of. And I think that's probably something that Peterson has told him he will get. Obviously, as a former quarterback, he understands the view when you're under center and before the snap is done to make any changes to the play to have it be more successful. And I really think that's something Bradford's really looking forward to. You're talking about the read as well, and I think that's all stuff that I think Bradford was looking for in order to get this next phase of his career going. I mean, this guy really hasn't had a chance to get his career started because of all the injuries. Now he has a full offseason. It really does seem like he feels he's got a fresh start and a whole new slate to really build off of.
Scott Grayson is with us here on the Sports Bash. He's back there. Pete and I are at Chickies and Pete's here in Atlantic City. And, the other thing was the fact that, as you mentioned, there was a lot of reports that he may not have been happy. He said those reports were untrue, but he did mention DeMarco Murray. And did you get a sense from his answer that Murray's unhappy and I don't want to talk about it? Or did you think he was being truthful when he said, look, we don't talk about football. We're just kind of friends?
I'm guessing that they probably don't talk much football when they do get together. Now, that being said, I'm sure it's come up. I'm sure those two guys, having been teammates in college, and I think they were even roommates in college, and now you look at them now playing for the same team in the same city in the NFL. How do you not, if you're not happy? I mean, isn't that somebody that you can trust after spending that much time with them, that you can kind of just be able to have somebody, be somebody to sound off on and just vent to and hear? And I'm sure both of them did that with the other one. And, his answer to me told me that there probably is some truth to what DeMarco Murray's saying. And I think it's going to be on Bradford now to be one of the guys who gets DeMarco to fully jump on board. Hey, I'm here. I'm riding this. I'm excited about it. Come be here as well.
Scott Grayson with us. One thing he said, and you were talking about this, Scott, I enjoy being able to go to the line and make those checks, make those audibles. But when he said, I think my mind is a great attribute to the game, my ears kind of perked up a little like, oh, maybe he does know what he's doing back there.
Yeah, and I think I think if you read between the lines, Pete, as well, what you hear is Chip never let me use my mind. He never let me have that part of my skill set at the line of scrimmage with me. And, there's a lot of things I sense he's excited about that Doug must have told him he's going to get to do in this offense. And therefore, he was willing to take this contract, which I don't think is I think it's more team-friendly than it is player-friendly, but it will give him the flexibility to, again, hit free agency and perhaps get an even bigger payday if he does come out and perform. So in that sense, that's probably where it does favor the player. And, I just get the sense in every way when I looked at Bradford's body language again here on this news conference that he's excited. He sees a fresh start. He sees a good opportunity and a chance to try to build something even stronger.
Scott, he said, now that I'm back for a second year, I'm looking to build on what I did as a leader. The Jenkins stuff a couple of weeks ago that he said, did you get the sense late in the year when you were in the locker room, even in games, the New England game, you were at the New England game, correct?
Yeah.
All right, which is a big one, even after losses. Did you get the sense that Bradford was becoming more of a leader?
Yeah, you definitely got the sense that he wasn't early on. And I think, like Bradford had said in his news conference, you were a new guy. You have to earn your respect. You have to get some of that. And when he started to have some of those, the shower meetings,
hey now,
and you got the sense from some of the offensive players that they were getting some more respect for Bradford as he was trying to become a leader. And at the same token, you got the sense from guys like Jenkins that they noticed this happening and appreciated the fact that somebody on offense was trying to establish themselves as a leader. Because, when you looked at that offense, everybody was quick to say, well, who's the leader over there? Because it doesn't seem like there is one. And for a long time, there wasn't. I think as the season went on and you got to the end, Bradford started to establish that. And I think now he's trying to look at the ability to have a full offseason going into next year where he is that leader.
He also, last one for you, Scott. I know you got an update coming up here. Stability is the key to success most of the time. He talked about coach and quarterbacks. He said, look around the league, the coach and the quarterback stability. He said, I know we have a new staff here, but the sound of it was, I think he's back here because he wanted to play for Doug Peterson, and he feels like this could be a stable situation.
I completely agree with you. After everything that they went through, and where, like I said, when you look at where this franchise was the day after Chip was fired, to all that went on in those couple of the month afterwards, the chaos that it seemed like was here. Who are they going to go after? Who do they want? When it ended up being a former quarterback, and it ended up being Doug Peterson, a guy who Jeffrey Lurie obviously has been very high on. The process all led him back to that. You look at where his roots are. I think, there's stability definitely there, and I think you're right. I think that when it came down to it, Bradford said, here's a place where I could tie myself to that might let me grow and be the guy I want to be and have the kind of success I want to have in this kind of an offense with as good of a defense on the other side of the ball as is there. To me, it seemed like a no-brainer. If as long as he agreed with everything that was going on with this coaching staff that came in, and I think he does, obviously, that he saw a situation here. You're right, to be tied to a head coach for a while and let it ride out for quite a few years, actually.